Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock Blog, and I'm here with Adam, Kenny, and Lady Chow Fung for another episode of Wuxia Weekend. And before I forget, I just want to mention we do have a Patreon page, so please go check out our Patreon, look at the different reward tiers, and consider contributing. It helps us to get mics and movies and just little things to help keep the podcast going. Today we're going to be doing a film called Bloody Parrot, a 1981 film directed by Hua Shan, and it stars Jason Pai Piao. This is a sort of mystery adventure based on a Gulong story, which I have never read, and as far as I know, there is no English translation of it available anywhere. And I believe that the story is also called Bloody Parrot or Blood Parrot. And it's essentially kind of like a mystery horror adventure where Jason Pai Piao plays Yi Ting Feng, who is trying to find out what happened with this treasure that vanished, and it leads him to some really strange places. So before we really get into anything about the plot or anything, I just wanted, how did people react to this movie?
Was really weird for me. Like I watched the movie and it just felt like it was lots of different things stitched together, and it was never really sure what the big picture was supposed to be. Kind of like the plot is kind of straightforward yet very convoluted at the same time. And there were a whole cast of characters, some of which were pretty like a mix of forgettable and also vitally important. So you're never really sure like what you're watching. Like, is this like a pivotal moment, or I'm not really sure. Like, people are dropping left, right, and center, and then secrets are being unveiled here and there. But at the same time, like all the stuff doesn't seem to pull together very well. But that's just my impression of it. Like it was a very confusing movie for me.
It was entertaining. I felt. I was glued to it because there's so much confusion. I was like, what is going on here? Why is that happening? I felt like there were too many story plots going on and not really one focused on until we got towards the end. But it was, I don't know, it was just confusing. But I can't say it was a bad movie. I need to watch it again, knowing what I know in order to sort through it. But it was definitely a lot going on in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a confusing movie, but within about, by the half-hour mark, I just fully embraced the fact that this was just a really confusing movie and thoroughly enjoyed it. I just stopped worrying about trying to understand what was going on, and it actually I think it made sense at the end. I'd need to watch it again to be sure. But yeah, it's one of those movies, if you're worried too much about wanting to understand what's going on at every moment, you're probably not going to enjoy it. If you can put that to rest and just take what's happening, it's a lot more enjoyable. And you mentioned it's a Gulong story. The atmosphere in this is a lot more what I expect from a Gulong thing than we've been getting in the TV show we've been reviewing too. I have to say this kind of had a very good atmosphere to it, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think this is an incredible movie. I really like it, but I also do have to acknowledge it is really confusing. The first time I saw it, I was horribly confused by it. And I think I might have had to watch it again before I even did a review. I can't recall, but I did a video review of it when I first got it on VCD. But it's very confusing, and I also think it's one of these movies that is, by its nature, going to be very divisive because it has so many weird elements thrown together, and it really depends on how they land for you. And like some of us, I think, sort of like I kind of had a similar reaction to Adam, where the confusion sort of pulled me in. It's sort of what anchored me to the movie. It kind of like it's one of these films you watch and you feel a little bit drunk as you're watching it because it's so bizarre. Mm-hmm. And also that line between, it's like it's a horror movie, but it never really firmly puts its feet down in the horror territory. It keeps kind of going back into sort of, no, this is actually reality. Nothing supernatural is happening. But look, this is real. It keeps kind of switching back and forth. And I found that very disorienting, but also very immersive because it's sort of like you don't know what's real and what's not real. And it's really well shot too. I think that the camera work in this, when they go into the rooms and you're sort of seeing it from the character point of view, I thought those scenes were incredibly effective. And there's just something a little bit more going on in this movie than some of the other standard fare at the time. But I don't know. I guess we should get into the plot, or what people can glean of the plot. Did anybody have any thoughts on the story itself? And then after that, we can get into the characters. But the story is very simple, but kind of like Kenny said, there's a whole bunch of stuff that just happens, and it almost distracts you from the thread of what's going on.
80% of the movie is a red herring, basically. Yeah. It's kind of the way it works. I felt like the movie was really. I honestly thought like part of the way through the movie they kind of forgot about like the beginning of the movie. It felt like they were writing the story and they totally forgot what kind of a story they were writing and it became something else. But at the beginning of the movie comes back at the end, and I'd really forgotten the beginning of the movie. You have that little prologue at the beginning with the guy looking for the treasure, and he encounters the parrot, and he wishes to find the treasure, and it's like I'd totally forgotten about that because so much had happened. And then that's pivotal. The whole plot revolves around.
And
that.
I think Dion, you must have had the same experience because you messaged me that you had a like question about the plot, and then the movie ended. You're like, oh no, I got it. I know what happened. And so
when I was watching it, it was like Adam had said, it starts out on one tone, and you have this missing treasure, and they're trying to find it, and this parrot comes to visit, and then the next thing you know, you have this man who falls in love with this woman, and all this weird, freaky stuff happens. And then at the end, it comes right back around, but it completely makes total sense that, they had to keep a secret. In order to keep a secret, they had to do all these weird things with the Blood Parrot. And I thought the Blood Parrot was dead at one point of the movie, and they were going to completely scrap that whole idea. And but they came right back to it, and it made a whole bunch of sense at the very end. If you don't stay until the end, you'll never get the confusion.
Yeah, no. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I actually spent, like, the first, I don't know, was it 10, 15 minutes of the movie confused thinking that Ye Fei Ting was, Ye Ting Feng, actually, sorry, was, like, martial nickname Bloody Parrot or something, and that's, like, all the people are looking for him, because I don't see, even at the end of the movie, I couldn't understand why he was, like, being implicated in this whole business, right? Like, he wasn't like the bodyguard or whatever. He wasn't like a police officer trying to locate the hidden jewels, or like Tia Han, like Tia Han was. Like Tia Han, it was his job to find the jewels or whatever. He was just implicated out of nowhere, and I couldn't figure out a good reason for it.
I think just because he was poking his nose into it. I think that was the only reason. I think because he went to see the prostitute at the Parrot brothel. And I think
but that was only after he first like ran into Guo Fan's brother or something. He was in the coffin.
Yeah, because he goes to investigate the matter, right? And I think but there were also those guys that waylaid him, and right,
right. But so why are they after him if he's not really involved in it yet?
I don't have an answer for you guys. I imagine there might be an answer in the book, but I won't know until it's translated into English. But I will definitely note that I think you're right, Kenny. That's a pretty confusing point. But my sense of it overall is that people were after him because he was poking his nose into the mystery. But again, I'm not. There's a lot of things in this film that don't quite that don't feel like they really provide solid answers. And I'd say
I think that's what sort of like bugs me the most about the plot is that you sort of get half answers for everything, and sort of by the end you think, okay, there's mostly closure here, but if you look at it a bit deeper, it's like doesn't quite hold together. Like I can see what they were trying to do, but they contradict themselves a little bit here and there, and it's just
Jihan's like, I've got a great idea. How about if I hide in this coffin for a week and pretend to be dead? Then I'll come out and pretend to be a hopping vampire, and then we'll totally crack the case. It's like,
I kind of felt bad for him at the end. Now we're gonna have to spoil things to talk about this, but we find out that like Shakespearean death scene at the start when the wife kills the husband and all this stuff happens is really just a ruse so that they can gain the treasure, and they're revealed to be sort of the people behind everything at the end. And then the Lao Wing character, Tihen the Merciless, is credited.
Wait, stop.
What did I do something wrong?
No, I'm confused again.
Okay, wait. Who did I say something incorrectly, or is that?
You said that the husband and the wife.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to say husband and wife. I meant the two characters at the start of the movie who killed the princess
and the guy
and
was
the chief.
Trying to
Apologies.
Trying to find the treasures. Okay, and the emperor, we know he gets lost in the sauce. But go ahead.
But again, on that point, the relationships between the people there at the start, like the subtitles sometimes refer to the old guy as prince and sometimes as emperor. I think, I'm not really sure. And then the woman was supposed to be the princess, right?
Yeah.
Was she supposed to be the concubine or queen or whatever, the consort to the old man, or were they like siblings? Because they use prince and princess.
Yeah.
Like and then
I don't know, but when they talk about how she had the child from him, and that guy said he had some kind of weird like perversion.
I was thinking maybe he was like incestuous in some way, right?
Me too.
I don't know. I was not at all clear on that. Either they were like siblings and that was what was going on, or when they panned and the curtain, like you didn't see what was going on behind the curtain, something really strange was happening that we were just supposed to be assuming. But I don't know. But either way, but either way, I think that that when it sort of wraps it up at the end and you realize it's them, all I was going to say is you kind of feel bad for Tihen the Merciless, who, you know, he sort of shows up at the dramatic moment and then he gets arrowed in the back, and I'm not even sure I know who arrowed him in the back still. That was another point of confusion for me, because we just see somebody's hand pulling on a lever, right?
It was the woman, right? She was like,
but wasn't she dying on the ground, or am I mistaken?
I think she grabbed it as she was dying.
Oh,
is
okay.
My recollection, which could be wrong.
But the thing is, like, that when when Tia-Han was stabbing, I don't remember what the chief bodyguard's name was. He looked like really like distressed as well. Like he'd been injured, and the camera angles like seemed to imply he'd been stabbed in the back a little bit. I'm not sure like what happened there. And the way the bodyguard looked towards the woman, it was like, why didn't you help me sooner, kind of thing as well. Like I don't know like what sort of like it felt like.
Oh, like she was doing it so that she would be the one left with the treasure?
Yeah.
That's possible. Again, this is one where I really think the book probably clarifies a lot, and they might have been relying on the audience kind of knowing the book. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that I thought that last scene was actually a little bit confusing in the way that it played out. I still thought it was a good last scene, but I was confused by some of it.
Yeah, like how did Shanu get out?
Yeah, how did she get out?
Well, she got naked, and then she like, you know, that like there was a lot of stuff going on that didn't make sense in that scene, right?
I figured she was doing, back in the olden days, we had the computer game Zork, where you had those text-based fantasy games, and you'd have these mazes in those games where every room had the same identical text description, and the only way to figure out how to get around was to drop one item out of your inventory in each room, and you're like, oh, this is the room where I dropped this. Yeah, so I figured she was just doing that with her clothing. She's like, all these mirror rooms look the same, so I'll leave this item of clothing here and this item of clothing here. So I think, but
yeah, I thought it was like breadcrumbs to
similar,
so that. But I think she didn't have to leave her clothes. She could have torn bits off. So that was a little gratuitous, I thought. But
they also did establish very early on that she didn't care about like that sort of thing anyways. Like,
Well, we knew from the beginning when we
Yeah.
met her that she didn't care about clothing.
Yeah.
Come on now.
But I think instead of like being breadcrumbs,
No, it's because she
I,
did care.
no, I was thinking that she was trying to cover the mirror so it wouldn't reflect, more than like trying to find the trail back. Because the thing that seemed to be confusing them more the most was the fact that these mirrors were disorienting and throwing them off with their sense of direction more than like trying to
Oh, I
find
see
the
what you're
straight
saying.
path. So
That's
she needed
true.
the whole piece of cloth to like cover as much of the mirror as she could.
Well, that makes more sense.
But
Yeah,
then
that does
it doesn't
make some
explain how she
sense.
managed to go through like all the traps and like perilous paths all the way back up outside to the surface. Somehow pull a D&D and like have a 50-foot rope ready on hand to lower into the well.
But how could she possibly have enough clothing to cover all those mirrors?
It was cold in China. I don't know.
And she had a parrot too on the rope as well.
Yeah,
She
well.
pulled a parrot out of nowhere.
And the parrot was saying all these apropos things too, if I recall. But yeah, I don't know. I think why don't we before we talk about the characters, why don't we talk about the fight sequences? You know, there I don't feel like these were like extensive, but there were still some significant ones. The one that I always like is the one with the guy with the long sword. What was the guy's name? I know I got it written down here. Oh yeah, Gao Huang with the long sword. That guy. There's that scene in the city where he's fighting Jason Pai Piao with this really long blade, and he kind of makes cool use of it by like planting it in the ground and then sort of moving around it and stuff. But I don't know what fight sequences did you guys like in this, if any?
No, I did enjoy the longsword scene just because it highlights like the difference in weaponry there, like a little bit more. Because when Ye Feng was trying to stab him, but his sword wasn't long enough, while the assassin's sword was like long enough to like try to injure him. It was like, yeah, it's an interesting sort of highlight that weapons make a difference. So similarly, when we have the princess in before Madame Li, as she was known then, like using her silk thing to try and like tie people up and keep them at range. I thought that was quite interesting as well.
Yeah, I really liked that fight scene with Madame Li and what was the guy's name?
I
Master
don't
San?
know. I don't even know where he came from. Like he just showed up out of nowhere.
He was a painter who got wrapped up in the mystery because he knew about. I don't know what his motivation really was, to be honest.
Was that the painter?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the painter, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't make that connection.
And yeah, it was a very odd sort of decision, I think, on his part. But
Why he showed up then too after all these years? It's just I don't know. It's just the whole thing was kind of strange.
But how many years had gone by since the start of the movie is another question that's never really like. They mentioned. Oh, you're muted, Dion, by the way.
It had to be like 20 years because I thought that the treasure maybe had disappeared shortly after the birth of the daughter.
I'm not sure because they never really said. I thought it was just basically immediately after all of these like murders and suicide stuff happened that news of this treasure is immediately leaked out, and then there's the weird plot stuff going on. But yeah, you're probably right because they had to have set up this whole town of people, and that's not something you can do immediately. And unless she was pretending to be Madame Li in her spare time, and like, I don't know. Which is entirely possible. Like it's in good on novels, people can set up elaborate plots like this where they have a secondary personality that they live in for half the time.
I mean, that's the other thing I talked about. The plot of deciding to hide in a coffin for a while. It's like this entire plot of the best way to hide the treasure is to create this entire bizarre plot. It's like, how did this in any way help them keep the treasure hidden? But I don't know. It just seemed like it drew attention to it. But once again, ultimately, it didn't really affect my enjoyment of the movie.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the fight scenes before we get into characters?
Oh yeah, yeah, we're on fight scenes, aren't we?
Oh, there was one. What's her face? The girl who uses faces as a
Oh,
weapon.
Hong Yu, that's one of my favorites.
Oh yes, yes.
Played
Yeah, I
by
like her.
It says something about this movie that I forgot that scene just with everything that happened. I mean, the fact that that wasn't one of the top things in my head says a lot about this
your
movie.
skins will make a wonderful dress, right? Wasn't that what she said to them? Something to that effect.
Yeah.
A skirt out of faces.
Played by Yung Ching Ching. Yeah, she was great. I thought that was a really cool character, and just the way that the sort of slow, patient, way she's walking around with the embroidery as the men are circling her, and then the battle was tremendous, and I like how Yi Ting Feng is just sort of chilling on the roof up there. He just figures she has it handled, and so he doesn't even participate.
I thought he was like still recovering from his.
Yeah, he was, and he was
weird
also
frenzy poison.
He was also helping Juno too. But like, I felt like he could have stepped in if things got crazy.
But she had it well underhand.
Yeah, I was kind of upset when the when Master San, took her out. It was a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd see more from her character because she was really creative to use the embroidery in order to kill someone. That was really cool.
And I liked the the extensive use of needles and poisons and all these things that kind of unnerved you in the fight. So it wasn't just the fight itself. It was like, ooh, there's a snake there, or there's some kind of mysterious potion bomb just went off, and now everybody's fighting each other, and all these
that was
things.
funny.
So I don't know. I guess we can get into the characters. I mean, what were your favorite characters in the movie? Who stood out, I guess?
They all stood out in different ways. I think, well, now that we've sort of talked about Skin Girl, like she definitely sticks out as a character, but she showed up out of nowhere as well. Like she was just like suddenly, I'm the handmaid who's actually looking after Shonu, but she was never around for any of the beginning parts. So it's kind of weird. But I did like the witch, the old woman character, like and her like mumbling and cursing. She was pretty cool and creepy.
Yeah, Madame Song, who's played by Teresa Ha Ping, who did Devil Grandma in Magic Blade, and always plays these kinds of characters. This is Devil Grandma is one of the best, but this is like up there with Devil Grandma in my opinion, because she sort of does she sort of, on the one hand, she's like a witch, but she'll also sort of use that to deceive people and then launch a bunch of darts at them and stuff. So
man, she was good. She was really spooky and creepy.
Yeah, she was like an evil Yoda, wasn't she? She was just like this, like I don't quite know how to explain it, but like when she was fighting with I think what was it? She was fighting with Lord Chang, right? She got in some kind of conflict with one of the guys. There was like an intensity to her that was disturbing, and I think that the like Kenny was saying, the mumbling and all that stuff was really cool. It just kind of made her that much more creepy.
Well, and the fact that she had like peepholes into Sharon's room.
Well, we could talk about that room on its own. I think that's a whole that's like an important center of the movie. But yeah, so I liked her. What about any other characters? Like any of the other, like Ti-Hun the Merciless, the main character Yi Ting Feng, or the Lord Chang character, the guy who's dressed in red, basically, is how I kind of remembered him. Any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, Lord Chang was an interesting character that kind of comes in as this kind of very straight, very serious investigator partway through the movie, who's, it kind of puts everything in an interesting context, because by this point, Yi Ting Feng and all these characters have been dealing with this weirdness for half the movie, and they're just they have to explain things to him a bit, and it is entertaining having this character just burst into the plot halfway through. I mean, it's random on one hand, but it worked for me.
And I liked his character because you didn't know if he was going to be evil when he first came or if he was going to be a good helper and an investigator. And the guy that usually plays him usually doesn't get meaty roles like this. Yeah. And he did a very good job. He's usually some kind of like minor villain in different movies, but he did a really, really good job as the investigator. I liked his seriousness when he had to be. And he just did a really good job with it. I was hoping his character would make it to the end, but no such luck.
Yeah, because he stabs an old man in the neck in a really painful spot, and at that moment you think, oh, he's a bad guy.
Yeah,
there was
you're
no
stupid.
Real reason for it. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like he isn't really a good guy or a bad guy necessarily. He's just the investigator, and he does his job, and beyond that, he doesn't care. So it's yeah, he's just a functionary to an extent.
And what did you guys think of the Juno character? That's the prostitute.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
I thought I thought the actress did a pretty good job in the role. The character itself was a little weird. Like she starts off by like spouting all this mystical crap and being, oh, it's a devil's stone, and I'll eat it, and I'll morph into around and rub pearls on my genitalia. I don't know. Like she did a very the scene was like sufficiently creepy. I think she did a really good job of it, but the way the character was written was kind of odd.
I'm not sure that scene makes any sense in retrospect, because I mean at the time I thought it really was a supernatural movie. It's like, oh, she's kind of possessed, and then he helps her get over her possession and she becomes more normal. But it's like looking back on that scene now with the whole explanation of the plot. What was she doing?
It was an aphrodisiac. It was meant to be an aphrodisiac.
Because remember, it was the same red bloodstone that her, I guess, dad would have taken.
Because she had been
to rape the mother.
She was like steeped in all this idea of the Demon King and all that stuff. So I think it was just her imagination running with the experience.
With it. Yeah.
But the reason I want to talk about that scene is because that scene, and I said this when I did the video review, it reminds me of the Evil Dead movies. Like, it's got a real Evil Dead vibe. I think, when did Evil Dead come out? 82, or was it around this time?
Yeah, I think 82, I would guess. I can double check. But
so this is before Evil Dead, I think.
Yeah, well, it is before Evil Dead. Yeah, it's definitely before Evil Dead 2, which was something I was wondering when a guy cut his own hand off. Yeah. But I was like, but yeah.
But that scene, it was so like hyper realistic in the way it was done. It just reminded me of like a lot of the undead sort of attack sequences in Evil Dead movies.
Evil Dead was 81 by the way.
It was so it would depend on the month. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, the release date was 83. So.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm confused here. They're getting multiple answers. So.
Okay.
Problem with Googling things.
But yeah, it's a very bizarre scene, and it sort of fakes you out. You think it's supernatural, and then it turns out that the Rock is this aphrodisiac, which doesn't entirely explain all of the transformations that we saw. So presumably that's the whatever chemistry is going on in that stone affects skin and eyes and all kinds of things.
It's basically bat droppings, right? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was red bat droppings over. Like what was like 10,000 red bat droppings or something? I forget what they said. It was
red bat droppings or red bat blood or whatever. Yeah. Something weird like that.
I think it may have been bat blood actually, but
it was nasty.
It
just
still
doesn't
nasty.
matter what it was. It was nasty.
But yeah, 81 though. 81 is the Evil Dead answer. That's my final answer.
Okay, so 81. That's a little difficult because Bloody Parrot is also 81. So.
Yeah, probably neither affected the other. It was just something that was in the air at that time.
But yeah, but what overall? I mean, that's the first sort of gross out scene. But what did you guys think of? Like this movie has a lot of gross out sequences in it, including the the inquest.
Autopsies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they're cutting open organs and like stuff is spilling out, and
Can
Yi
you
Ting
not
Fang
say it?
is, huh?
So can you not say it? It's really gross. No, keep saying
Yeah,
it, but
it's pretty normal to have an inquest in these movies to determine if someone was poisoned or not. It's kind of a stock scene, but you never see it.
Well, you never see it, and also, like, I felt like they did a good job of reminding you, this is like the olden days, before, like, refrigeration and, like, all kinds of things that would have made, like AC, things that would have made the inquest more palatable. This is like this is in primitive conditions, and even though Yi Ting Fung is this great hero of sorts, he's still vomiting all over the place because so I thought the movie did a very it doesn't quite get into like Boxer's Omen territory disgusting, but it uses the disgust well to kind of, I don't know, it just sort of makes you uncomfortable in ways that you probably should be for a film like this. Do you know what I mean? It kind of reminds you of like, this is like, life and death, like, things like that. And but I know, Dion, I think you said that the snakes were particularly troubling for you with the
I have an issue with snakes. Since I was a little girl, I had this recurring dream. And every time I see snakes on even TV shows or movies, I have nightmares. So there was way too many snakes at the end or towards the end of this movie. So I ended up having to watch another movie after it.
I always get a little creeped out about snakes too, because I'm always worried they're under my bed. That's always I don't know why, but I used to think I was safe because I live in Massachusetts, and then I found out no, we actually have some venomous snakes too. And that just ruined everything for me.
And I guess speaking of the snake scene, like the weird cannibal guy who was living in the cave, like what was
this
guy having the go? Like what was the deal with that?
well, let me ask you this: you know how like Juno was supposed to be the long lost daughter of the princess? Is it possible she wasn't? Because I know at one point didn't she she like poisoned her, right? So
yeah.
Is it possible that was the child?
I mean, if we go by the it was like an incestuous child, like the product of incest rather. I don't know what phrasing there was, but it kind of makes sense that the princess would be kind of disgusted by the child and like would keep it imprisoned in the cave somewhere and feed them on like maggots and flesh.
It was a really troubling scene. Now, that's how Lord Chang met his demise, right? Is in the is in there getting chewed on by that guy.
Well, then how did
distracted?
Well, then how did Juno end up with the little piece of jade that was sent with the daughter?
Maybe she was meant to be like a red herring, so that people would, if they went after the child, they would go to her. Do you know what I mean?
Her.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm not. Again, I think this is one where I'd really like to have the book in English so that we could sort of clarify some of these plot details. But I always found that character, the guy in the cave, a little bit of a confusing feature. But again, it is possible I missed something in the subtitles too. I feel this is one of those movies where a lot of stuff hinges on a single sentence, and if you don't catch it, you can really miss a lot of plot.
But I mean, it's common, and books turned into movies are really, really good at leaving an important detail out too that would tie it together. So,
but yeah. So, what about the what was it the like the Bloody Parrot itself? Like, what did you guys think of? Were you satisfied with how much bloody? Like, did the title leave you wondering whether they were leaving out, something really essential, or were you content with what we got at the end of the movie in terms of an explanation?
The explanation was fine, but I was disappointed that it wasn't like a movie about a monkey's paw, basically, because it started out sort of implying that, right? He made the wish, and then he paid the price of his son's life, and then he wishes for his son to come back, and then the emperor and everyone else around him dies. And I was thinking, oh, maybe this is they implied it to be a paranormal movie, and I thought the Bloody Parrot was like, oh, that's an interesting take on a very sort of, is it Western? The monkey's paw isn't Western, is it?
I don't know.
Let's just say like a non-Chinese trope, and then. But yeah, the explanation that it was just a lamp on a string, basically, and I was just like, well, that's fine. It's a very lame explanation, but it's like Scooby Doo, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, also, whenever that lamp showed up, people would just die. You know what I mean? And so, like, I guess it must have been the needles, right? That must have been what they were doing to kill people. But it was sort of presented in a very spectacular way, where it looked like this parrot was supernaturally somehow killing people.
But I thought at the beginning, remember in the end with the old guy said he got the parrot from the prostitute. I thought that was the Bloody Parrot. That was my red herring of the movie. So when the parrot died in the end and we didn't see it again for a while, I was like, oh, that was so stupid. But eventually we saw it again.
Yeah, no, it was I don't know. I kind of still wish there was more Bloody Parrot in this movie. That's probably one of my, if I had a complaint, it's that, I feel like if you're going to leave, if a film's going to be called Bloody, well, actually, Kenny, do we know if the title's actually Bloody Parrot? I guess that's a good.
Yes.
So if it's going to be called Bloody Parrot, I would like there to be,
more
a bloody parrot in the movie.
But why Bloody Parrot is my question. Like, does that? Were parrots a common thing in China back in those days? Like crows and stuff seem more like omens of demons and stuff, right? Like if we're going with a story that the Bloody Parrot was like formed from the blood essence of 13 demons as a birthday gift for the demon lord, then why would you not use something that was?
I think a parrot works because they can talk, so there's that.
It didn't really talk till the only parrot that talked was that random parrot at the end of the movie, though. So they didn't really use that. But yeah, I mean, I actually come from a place where parrots are just a common bird you see everywhere, and they've never been especially scary to me. So I don't know what, but I like the idea of it though, nonetheless.
Well, maybe it's because a parrot is a little bit on the colorful side, and you tend to think, you don't tend to think of them as creepy birds. Like like it might not be like the go-to, and it's not like a vulture or a raven or something.
Casting against type.
Yeah. But I don't know. I have no idea. But I thought it worked. I mean, I like the idea of the Bloody Parrot.
Like I'm amused at like the threatening parrot images in the opening montage. Spooky parrot.
Well, it's one of those things where you thought, oh, maybe it's like a translation issue, but no, it's supposed to be a parrot, and so yeah, I don't know, but I guess I don't know. I think they build it up well enough. It's just that there's never any actual Bloody Parrot. I feel like we don't know how effective that would have been because we never all we get is like this. It's kind of cool because you do get like the way they have the lamp effect work. Everything turns red and it's like a presence, and I thought that was cool. But then they kind of pull it back and say, oh, it was just a lamp. So.
Well, it's kind of like if a Flying Guillotine movie didn't really show you the guillotine in action and you sort of implied that it beheaded people, like it's gonna be a lot less satisfying than actually like seeing it happen.
Though I don't know. I think it depends. I think sometimes that's kind of a cool effect. Like I would have been okay with it. I just would have kind of liked there to have been an actual Bloody Parrot at the end. Do you know what I mean? Or even if it was like a mechanical thing. Do you know what I mean? Even if it was just like a big giant device that slaughtered people, I feel that would have been more satisfying than like a lantern on the ground. And a guy with a fake nose that looked like the character from that Doctor Who episode where they were at opposite ends of a ship that was at a black hole.
Yeah.
It was that kind of.
Yeah, well, obviously, if they had a giant mechanical parrot show up at the end, that would have been ideal. But
that quibble aside, I really did like the movie. I thought it was a really enjoyable film, and I really do like the way that it blends all these different genres together. It felt to me like an interesting balance. And so I don't know, any other thoughts on it before we wrap things up? Is there anything that we didn't get to?
Oh, I guess the sets.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we briefly touched upon Shernu's bedroom, where like half of the movie takes place in, it feels like. That was like a really strange one. Like all the depictions of the Kama Sutra and weird demons painted on the wall. I mean, that's the only question, like why people would like decide that was a good decoration scheme for their room.
Well, it was a brothel, so I mean, and her explanation was that she thought that men found the fear stimulating. So, but then there was also the witch thing and all that. So,
And the peepholes.
yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it was kind of a weird place.
Yeah, and then I guess there was also the final dungeon, so to speak, was a pretty impressive sequence of set pieces there. Like, yeah, with the snake cave, and then you had the mirror maze, and the weird statues with the explosive energy blast, which was also a bit weird. Like, why do you suddenly have laser blast coming out of statue?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I thought that laser blast was pretty unusual, but it was sort of a dungeony like finale for sure. Though I don't know, I kind of got the impression that this was maybe one of the Shaw Brothers movies that might have been done more cheaply than some of the other ones for some reason. Something about the way it was done just didn't seem as extravagant as some of the others to me.
There's such like a breadth of like different locations that they use for everything, right? Yeah, we have all the different the shops that they fight in, the fight scenes in the streets, and then you have the pavilion where Madame Lee was staying, and then the final dungeon itself was like with all the mirrors and stuff. Like,
yeah, I don't know. Something about it just I don't know what it is. I just have always had this. It's probably not well founded at all, but I've just always had this sort of feeling about it that it felt like maybe just because it's a later movie too. Do you know what I mean? Like if I compare it to other movies from this period, like Buddha's Palm and stuff, there's so many more effects. Do you know what I mean? And this one, it has a lot of sets, but the effects are pretty subdued, I think.
But you didn't need all the effects in this one. I think what they did was good enough. Like you said, the Bloody Parrot should have been something completely different.
Yeah.
But you really didn't need, for the grossness, what kind of effect would you have to make it even more gross?
Yeah, that's true.
I was pretty grossed out enough.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the advantage of certain genres of horrors. You don't really have to spend a lot of money to be effective. And so I think, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like speaking of effects as well, there weren't really many used. It feels like all the fight scenes were fairly, I guess, as expected of like a good story. They were all fairly physically believable. I mean, there were one or two like lightness kung fu scenes, so they're like jumping up a floor or two and or landing from a very high fall. But other than that, most of it was like fairly, I say like in line with logic and science.
Yeah. So and again, I don't know. Any other thoughts before I wrap it up, or is everybody okay?
Good.
So this one is not available on Prime. So unfortunately, if you want to watch it, you probably have to get it on a VCD. It might be available streaming somewhere, but I haven't seen it yet. And hopefully they'll put this one out on DVD again and Blu-ray, because it's a really good one. And the VCD, you can see the movie, but it is a little bit on the grainy side because of the pixelation. And it's directed by Hua Shan, and it's a 1981 film. And I don't know what did everybody rate the movie? We should probably leave it with that so that people have a sense of what our actual if we're rating it on what did we say, 1 to 5? Was that our scale that we were going on?
Yes.
All right, so Kenny, since you seem to have the most negative reaction, what would your rating of this film be?
I gave sort of 3. I think this is worse, so I'd have to go for a 2 here. Like,
okay.
I'm not doing the half points. I'm just gonna go straight. It's gonna be
Straight to
discrete
two, full
numbers.
two.
Straight
Okay.
to 2. A full drop in tier.
Adam, what about you? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Adam.
I am unmuted,
Ah.
but there we go. Yeah, Kenny called me out last time on the using a half score. I effectively turned the 5 point into a 10 point by using a half. So I'm gonna stick to whole numbers from now on.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm going to give this a 4 because I genuinely like this. I mean, it is confusing. I'm not sure the plot held together, but the atmosphere in this movie is so good. It's full of all these great set pieces. The characters are great. I think its strengths outweigh any flaws it has definitely.
I'm going to give it a 3. It was very confusing, but I still felt it to be entertaining. I sort of enjoyed the movie. I liked the suspense of trying to figure out what was really going on in the picture and really not knowing until the very end of the movie. That's a plus for me. So I'm going to give it a 3.
And I'd give it a 4, and for all the reasons that I stated before. I think it's a good movie. I think it's a really unusual film, and it's really memorable. The scenes in this movie, there's some really memorable moments in the movie, and so I think it's worth watching. I would say to people, there's extensive nudity in the film, and that's probably something to be aware of going in, just in case now with people watching things on iPads and stuff now, you could be on a train or in public, or maybe you just object to nudity. So just know that going in. There's much more than there usually is in a Shaw Brothers wuxia film. And again, you're gonna have to get it on VCD if you do want to watch it. So we'll head out again. Check us out on Patreon and check in back next week. We'll have another movie up and we'll be discussing that. And until then, we will talk to you later.